Welcome, warriors.
Yay!
Thank you so much for being here with us again this week.
Yes.
We had just the most amazing guest on our show this week, warriors. We cannot wait for you to hear from her. Her name is Patty Wildasinn. She was awesome.
Yes. And she found us through Instagram.
Yes.
This was awesome.
Yeah. I love when that happens. It's so good when that happens. It's like, yay, we're reaching folks.
Yes.
that we don't know already.
More warriors for our community.
Yes, it's so good. All right. So before Abby hops into her recap, let me let you all know a little bit about who Patty is. Patty Wildasinn is a level 2 certified Kundalini Yoga teacher from Southern California, where she's taught yoga to all levels and abilities for 20 years. She loves working with seniors, kids with disabilities, people in chemical dependency rehab centers, and those in recovery from addiction. Prior to teaching yoga, she worked professionally as a nationally certified addiction counselor. She has spent over 3 decades helping others to discover their own success in navigating life's challenges and addiction recovery, which motivated her to publish her second book, Yoga for Addiction Recovery: 8 Limbs, 10 Bodies, 12 Steps, a personal and practical yoga manual. Her background in human development carries over naturally into her teaching and writing. All right. So, Abby, tell us about this chat.
This chat was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sounds familiar to our warriors,
But
wow, like, oh my gosh, like, again, I just don't even know where to start without like telling the entire episode.
Yeah.
Patty is amazing. Everyone must listen to this. She has such a beautiful way with words that even if we don't share the same experience, like I felt like I was a companion, like there with her through so much of her story. I felt like, oh yeah, like I was there in the car with you.
Mm-hmm.
You all don't know what I'm talking about, but I'll tell you. So this is hard for me to sum this up. But what I will say is that Patty starts off by sharing that as a kid, she had a low level of anxiety. But at the time, there wasn't a word for it. And so for her, it was nameless fears that she would experience. And growing up, there wasn't a lot of space or room to talk about emotions, and there was a lot of pressure for her to perform. So while she was in high school getting a 3.8, she also found drugs and alcohol to help comfort her and her anxiety experience. It wasn't until her 20s where she started to get the help that she needed, and started to learn different tools to navigate different challenges in her life. But then in her early 30s, she had her first panic attack. She shares what it's like being a parent to a child with special needs and the things that you have to consider and different stresses that you have in your life when you are advocating for your child and getting them the services and help that they need.
Yeah. And just worrying about who's going to be there for them if you're not. Right. And she shares so many important moments like that. And that were such a strong part of her anxiety journey up until now.
Yes. This entire story and what she's learned and her practices now are just so incredible. I'm going to share a little piece that she shares because it just has so stuck with me, where she says, you know, we can't compare our insides to someone else's outsides. And that is just one little nugget of beauty and wisdom that comes out of her throughout our conversation together. And her definition for anxiety worry, like all of that, This is not to be missed. This is such just a heartwarming, inspiring, amazing episode. And we have a new warrior in our family now.
Mm-hmm. Love when that happens. Yeah. And she just shares so much about her personal experience, right? I mean, and that's always what we appreciate, I think, as warriors, to just hear people's stories and direct from them. To check this episode out, it is absolutely fabulous. You are going to love it. Without further ado, here's the show. Welcome back, warriors.
Yay.
We are so excited to be joined today by a wonderful guest. Her name is Patty Wildasinn. Patty, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, we're so excited that you're here with us. We love talking to new warriors, and now you're one of us.
Yes.
Welcome to the tribe.
I love that. It is like, it feels like you've gone through kind of for me, a battle. Like it is like come out as a warrior on the other end.
Yeah. And there is a whole group that feel the exact same way.
Right. It's so important that we find each other in community, our fellow anxiety warriors. And so let's start there, Patty. Talk to us about how anxiety has shown up for you in your life.
It's such a broad topic, right? Anxiety, because I think as my life has progressed, there's been different levels and different layers of anxiety. But if I reflect back, I would say as a kid, like I always functioned with a low level of anxiety. Although at the time I wouldn't have had the vocabulary to put to it. I just felt like I had a lot of fears, and maybe I couldn't even name them. So nameless fears. I kind of would look around and feel like, gosh, maybe other people have a man. And again, I didn't have this vocabulary, but I felt like other people knew what they were doing with life. And I felt like I don't really know. Like, did everybody know what they wanted to be when they grew up? I didn't have a clue. Like, I felt like people around me were navigating much more successfully than I was. Although, again, having no words to even express that as a kid, like just feeling a little bit different. And so really that just progressed. And it's kind of, kind of the keeping up the appearances. I could perform on the outside and keep the insides just kind of hidden. I'm not, feelings weren't necessarily welcome in my household as a child. And it was unpredictable as well. So it wasn't a safe place to even have feelings like fear and anger, things like that. So I just kind of kept that bottled. And I would say hummed along with this low level anxiety. Then when I became a young teenager, I found drugs and alcohol, and that was a solution for me. In the beginning, it took away that anxiety. It took away the fear. I mean, I jumped in with, both feet and was off running, at the time I was 14. So, and it was pretty serious addiction within, 3 years. So a solution on one hand, but yet completely destroyed my life on the other hand. It was by the time I was 17, I was strung out on heroin. I was, still in high school. And because of this anxiety and fear, I was still pulling a 3.8 grade point average. I didn't want to deal with what would happen at home, like if I wasn't performing. So it's like kind of like this dual life. Like there's anxiety, this helps a little bit, but it's still there. Like I was just kind of afraid, don't want to get in trouble. Yet I'm out doing, things that would get me in trouble. Yeah. So, I tried different things, school, just kind of floundered for a few years after high school and ended up in residential treatment pretty early on in life. By the time I was 20, which back then was unusual. So in a way, that path of anxiety and drug addiction led me to a whole new life. So there I was given tools through recovery to kind of deal with me and my feelings and, my awkwardness and how do I go about life. So great tools were given to me, and I found a whole lot of freedom in that. It's not like I still wouldn't pause or hesitate, like, okay, this is a little scary or that's a little scary, but I didn't live with that constant, I would call it like pressure, just that constant pressure that when you're feeling anxiety, you're just, it's there. So, a whole lot of freedom at that point. I went on to become a drug and alcohol counselor. So, I just felt like, I'm able to share these tools with other people. And, it was really, it was great at the time. And it worked really well for a lot of years. It still does. However, later in life, so I would say maybe a decade or more after that, I actually experienced like my first full-blown panic attack or anxiety attack. That's what we called it, an ER for lack of a better word. It landed me in the emergency room when I was probably my early 30s. I had 2 young children. The youngest one he had special needs. And, even as a toddler, we realized, he's not able to talk and communicate. So that kind of put extra pressure on me. I was driving him to a doctor's appointment, and I was at a stop sign, and it crept like this tingling right up the back of my neck into the head. Like I felt like almost like my head was drowning, dizziness. Wasn't sure if I was going to lose consciousness, rapid heartbeat, just, I was like paralyzed just at that stop sign and scared to death, right? I'm going to drop dead. Yeah. totally terrifying. And to me, it came out of nowhere. Like I didn't have kind of a precursor to lead up to it. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm going to drop dead. This baby's toddler strapped in a car seat.
Right.
He can't talk, even though he's 3. Like, yeah, it was just devastating. And my life changed at that moment.
Wow. Wow. I want to highlight for a second, just your beautiful use of words, like throughout like the words and the way you paint stuff. I just feel like I'm with you throughout the entire experience. Like, just like I've been taking notes this entire time. Like, you're like, the first thing you said is like, there's these levels and layers. Right. And it's so true. There's like levels of anxiety and also layers to each experience of anxiety. And I mean, that stuck out to me. And then Margot and I can very much relate to not having a name for it. And you said nameless fears. And I'm like, oh, like, and then just painting this whole picture, like being this hyper, like, I don't think I had a 3.8 and I wasn't on drugs and alcohol in high school.
Yeah.
And just the like, I just think that hits so hard because on the outside, people can look like they have it together. They can look like, oh, look, this person is so successful. Look, this person, can handle anything that comes their way with a 3.8. And we just don't know what's on the inside, and so many people turn to drugs and alcohol because of their mental health, right? And because they need something and they don't have the tools.
Right. So much about comparing, like when we compare our insides to others' outsides. Like I was performing on the outside, but I was comparing like how I felt inside and to what I saw other people, like what they portrayed on the outside.
Right. The assumptions we make in our mind about what other folks are going through just by looking at them. Right.
And I could never measure up, like in my own mind, it's like, the way. So that's a powerful lesson right there, is not comparing.
Yeah. I just want to highlight too. I want to highlight to you, Patty, that you used a word that Abby can attest that I've used so many times to describe my anxiety, and that's a hum. And when you said it, I felt like an instant ease, and I felt my body relax, because I haven't heard anyone else, even in our community, use that same word that I use all the time on the pod in generally to describe my anxiety as like, slowly boiling water until you can't contain it anymore, and the bubbles blow over the top, and it's the side of the pot. And so when you said that, I was like, oh God, yes, this is somebody that understands. They understand my experience, even though, as Abby said, our life experiences so far anyway are extremely different from one another, but yet we've already, I feel, connected by this one thing that you said. And that's the best part of hearing everyone's like initial journey in all their layers, is just finding, yes, that's me too. Right. Like I understand that part, even though I don't understand everything. I understand that part. I feel that part. And the rest is just so fascinating too. Like, so just thank you for sharing all of it, because there really are a lot of levels and layers to the things we experience, or the human experience is very extremely layered. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's underneath, like the outside, we have a different experiences, but it's when we connect with someone on that emotional level, or the description word where you go, oh God, somebody gets me, like there's just relief in that.
Completely.
Yeah. Not feeling alone.
I mean, I felt it again after I commented on your amazing language. when you said we can't compare our insides to someone's outsides, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I do that all the time. Like,
yes, we do.
We all do, right? Yeah.
Even with tools, even with awareness, And so again, I love how you put things, because I'm just so there with you. I can so relate.
Yeah. Thank you.
Same.
Yeah. It's
it's
a journey.
It's a journey. We use that word a lot too, right?
Yeah.
It's just, and journey is it just describes an experience that is ongoing. right? And so it's like there isn't necessarily a positive or a negative connotation to it. That's what I love about that word too, is that our life is a journey. It's going to take us in a million different paths and directions, but it's ongoing. And so we've got to show up for ourselves for it. Otherwise, who knows where we're going to wind up in some kind of ditch or dead end. Now I'm just thinking about road trips and I'm stressed. Anyway, moving on. Moving on. So Patty, how does anxiety kind of manifest itself in you, like physically, in your mind and body, in your behaviors? If you want to share about a little bit about how it manifested, starting from when you were a little bit younger up until now, or focus on the now, whatever feels good.
Yeah, I feel like when I was a kid, I feel like I kind of covered that. It was just kind of that constant humming companion right there. And so when I had that first panic attack I talked about, it was very, very physical, very visceral. The sensations in the body, the fear like was through the roof. I ended up in the emergency room and they ran every test and this and that. And okay, no, you're fine. So, sent me on my way and it just continued. And for me, it would spike a lot when I was driving, because that's when the first one happened. So every time I'd get in the car, I would be like terrified. And so sometimes that alone was enough to trigger it, like just even the thoughts. Or I would just be so, like kind of white knuckling it. And at the time, my son was like 3, 4, 5, 6, like those years were really rough because this was ongoing for me. And he had, with his special needs and autism and overgrowth syndrome, we've got a ton of PT and OT and all kinds of therapy appointments and speech. So I was driving 30 miles each way 3 times a week, so it'd be like, wow. Kind of get in the car and just, it was all I could do, like to get him there. And the way life changed for me is, I had the very physical response, but I used to love to show up at the park or a playground and have the place to myself with the kids, and we'd run and we'd play and this. And so now it was like, if there was downtime and we had time for that, I would very much be conscious about, well, I can't be alone. There needs to be other people there. Like if I just drop dead from a heart attack, which I'm, waiting to do, somebody's got to be there that could, my kid still can't even go and ask somebody for help because he doesn't talk, but yeah. So that's changed. So, just a lot of this in those early years. And then ending up in like going to therapy, going to psychiatrists, and everybody just validating so much, like, yes, it's anxiety, it's panic, it's kind of giving me tools.
Yeah.
And so I would use the tools that I had as a counselor. I would use the ones that I got in counseling. I would use prayer. I would, kind of use all of these things, but it was showing up. I needed something more at the time, but I didn't know it. And again, all the medical tests were, all the blood panels were like, it's fine, you're okay. It's, so it was very much kind of drilled in that it was in my mind.
Yeah.
And the more I fired, the more it wired. It's like, it just makes those grooves like, so even today, and I would say, like, I have been out of that, that intensity for many, many years, but if I get behind the car and I like think about it, and most days I don't give it a second thought, but if I pause and have that moment of like thinking about being anxiety, or what if I'm stuck here, or if there's traffic, or this is the road I've had one here, like you can remember where you've had that. So I can get that little bubbling going, yes, even just by thinking. So yeah, it's, and again, not all the time. I feel very grateful for that, but it can still show up. Yeah,
totally. I mean, that's I so appreciate you saying that, because that's really how Margot and I feel, right? Like, we can have all of the tools, and we know them and we practice them, or we choose not to practice them, or we forget about them, or whatever. And it doesn't matter, because sometimes anxiety is still like, hey, no, I'm going to say something awful to you and make you worry. Hey, I'm going to make you think of this one time years and years ago and have you stress about it now. And it's like, it doesn't matter how many tools we have, like, anxiety is still there with us. And so I so appreciate you sharing that piece. I also just want to comment, because I do know that some of our warriors can relate to this, having a child with special needs, and what that different stress and that different pressure and that different anxiety that probably comes up when you're trying to advocate for your kid and get them the services they need, as opposed to having a kid that doesn't have those needs. And then just stressing about, is your kid getting the right help, right? Whatever the right services, how will they be, and all that stress. And so, I don't know if you want to share anything about that, but I know that there's people that can very much relate to that type of anxiety. And, it's a little different than the other anxieties, like the driving anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I would say in the height of, the kind of regular and more severe panic attacks, he was in a lot of therapy. So again, driving him there, but, just kind of getting started in preschool and kindergarten, those types of ages where and honestly, it was so overwhelming because I didn't even know really what he needed yet. It's like I have a child who needs help with pretty much everything, and he doesn't stop talking now, but it took a lot of years for him to talk. So that at the time was just that, God, what if I'm not there? What if who would take care of this child as well as I would? And so my anxiety took me to the place where I really thought I'm going to die with the physical symptoms. And so, there was so much about leave. And my daughter is a little bit older, and again, it's neurotypical in school, and I could drop her off, and she went for the day, and it just was like more constant care. So it was kind of that constant worry and navigating the system. It was very overwhelming.
Yeah. They don't
it's
make
other
it
parents
easy.
that helped. Like that would catch me in the
Yes.
parking lot in tears, and okay, this is what we do next. So it was people, that helped. It wasn't. It was other people.
Yeah.
That walked me through it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
value
what
of
it sounds.
community.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's the community versus like educating people. Hey, this is what you can do to get help. It's I've learned this. Let me teach you what I've learned.
Right. Like, I've been here. We're going to do this, and okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing quite like connecting with a person that's been where you've been. I'm sure maybe the experience was similar when you went to drug and alcohol counseling, right? And were in treatment, or I feel like I might be remembering it wrong. Was it in treatment?
Yeah. I went to residential treatment.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah. So I stayed a long time, which was good. But yeah, I went there and people were speaking my language, right?
Yes.
It's the first time I went, oh my God, these people are talking about the way I feel.
Yeah.
And that had not been like welcomed before. So, that was seen as kind of to me, I viewed it as a weakness, and a liability. And what I found out is, oh gosh, like being able to talk about it and connect is actually the asset, because that's what helps us through.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yes.
Like it's, I had to totally change my thinking. And yeah.
Wow. That was so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still processing. I mean, just that's the asset, right? That is the asset. That is everything. Absolutely beautiful, Patty. Thank you so much for that. All right. So let's move into a little bit of some of the strategies that you've been, sprinkling in. You've said, like, obviously when you were in treatment, and then throughout, right, in the many layers of our anxiety, what are some of the ways that you've found to be the most useful to you when you're either in a little bit of a spike, or when you're coping with something specific, or maybe just that general hum comes back to you even all these years later? What are some of the go-tos that help you strategy wise during your anxiety?
So I have a lot of tools now in my toolbox. So I would say that one of the gifts of this severe anxiety is that I really have a whole new career path now. So the counseling that I did for all those years just carries over naturally. I mean, I still do some of that, but I was telling you, I was trying to like let it go, turn it over, using like kind of prayer, meditation, that kind of a thing, like just, trying these skills that I had. But what I realized is I was trying so hard to get rid of it and let it go that it was like holding it tight, right? Like when you're trying too dang hard, there's no way it's going anywhere because I'm just grasping. But I didn't get that. I didn't get like, okay, I'm not, because it was so unacceptable, right? It was completely unacceptable what was happening to me and the way I was feeling. So I didn't pause to accept it and then take action. I just wanted it gone. So in the process of trying so stinking hard, I was actually holding on tighter. So it was one morning, and again, so I had the counseling tools, I had that kind of stuff. And one morning, my husband, we were have members of a local like health club here, and so my husband is looking across, and he's sick of it at this point, actually, like he's over it, right? And so because I'm just always either crying or this, or I'm anxious, and so he looks across the table and he goes, you know what? He goes, you're not staying home today waiting to have a heart attack. I'm taking you to yoga. He had been to one of these classes before. I was Kundalini Yoga. He goes, I'm taking you to yoga. And I'm like, what do I wear? You know what I mean? It's like, that was like, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. He's like, I don't care. People are dressed all, because Kundalini Yoga is a little bit, and I jumped into all kinds of yoga after that, but it's a little bit funky, right?
It is.
Yes, it is.
And, so it's like people show up in all kinds of stuff, right? So it's not like I don't have to have the perfect matching yoga outfit to go. So I throw on some sweats and I go, and I'm hesitant, and he goes with me, and he's not even like a yogi. So that's what's so interesting is how he delivered me here. And I sat down in class, and I felt like the teacher was talking to me. And so I felt like, oh God, I felt safe there. And so I started going every week, and then I added a Tuesday night. And so I kind of felt, okay, safe here. So the tools, what that opened up for me. So now I've been teaching Kundalini Yoga 20 years. So, I mean, it took me on a whole new path, but what it opened up a deeper spiritual relationship and connection for me. And it gave me very specific ways to breathe with intention and move my body to get rid of that stagnant energy. When it just, I was trying so hard, to mentally approach it. You can't think yourself out of bad thinking, using my own skills to get where they got me. And I'm not saying bad thinking even gets us into anxiety, but, I was trying to cope with it, what was already in here. And so, and I did have some good skill set, but it wasn't enough. So it took my practice in Kundalini Yoga, took it to the next level. So deeper spiritual connection. And like I said, very intentional ways to move the body and to breathe. When we're holding on so tight, we want one thing, but it's not happening, we become stagnant, the energy within. And so then that just kind of sits and multiplies, and also movement moves emotion through the body. If we're not moving intentionally, the emotion sticks as well. So for me, I love that there are the movement itself. The physical body is so important in supporting mental, emotional, and spiritual. So I was missing that piece. That was definitely missing for me. And breath. So one of the things I love, and the way it goes in, and I keep yoga is yoga, but this is what I share is specific to Kundalini Yoga. So it's taught that so breath is really in charge, because the mind follows the breath and the body follows the mind. So when we panic, right, when we get anxious and the breath does its own thing. So our breath is a pretty accurate indicator of our emotional state. So when it's erratic, right? It's either shallow, it's fast, maybe we're not even breathing, we don't need it, don't even know. I've done all of these in active, anxious panic attacks. So it's that reminder, if the breath gets out of control, then the mind's going to be like, oh my God, what's happening? And then the body follows the mind. Oh, okay, we got to panic because the breath and the mind. So it's just that kind of knowledge, to stay in command of the breath helps the mind to stay calm, and then the body follows suit too. So some of the things, my specific tools, there's a left nostril breathing, which calms the whole body. It's calming, cooling. It's that feminine energy. And then there's an anti-stress breath, which we use mouth and nose and kind of alternate the patterns. So those two, I would say, are my definite go-tos for calming and just kind of staying in that steady place. So then mind and body don't freak out either. So I found a huge, kind of a whole new world in that. And it weaves really nicely with the work I've done before, counseling, and yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I know I can speak for Margot on this. Huge fans of the breath. like for us, both of us, we both have, the coming of age story of how we both found yoga, and both of us found yoga because we both had anxiety, right?
Mhm.
Both were experiencing panic attacks. We were, and we each organically found it in different ways. But for both of us, it was game changers too. Just learning like, oh my gosh, I have control over my breath. I can change my breath. If I change my breath, it can change how I actually feel, right? Like children should learn this, like, wow, what a game changer. And I love, so you shared the left nostril breathing, right? And then you shared what I heard was kind of like the seesaw breathing and the alternate types of breathing. And I love how we all find our own breath. Like for me, I just always love my long extended exhale. Like if I'm stuck in traffic with anxiety and I want to scream, I just have that really, really, really long exhale. And for me, that's the one that like grounds me and centers me. And I love how we all find the breath that works for us, right? But I also love how we've all found yoga. And I just wonder like how many times people have listened to our podcast and been like, oh, maybe I should try some yoga. Like, because it changes everything. In Kundalini, especially, it's so community centered. It's so beautiful in the singing. It is a little weird at the beginning. I'm not going to recommend everyone try Kundalini yoga. I loved it for a bit. I took a break for a bit, but there's just so much goodness in that. And it's just so awesome that your husband, who's not even a yogi, is the one who just like led you there.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like if it weren't like, I almost feel like I had to go through that to get me where I am today, because honestly, I probably wouldn't have just shown up. Oh yeah, let me just go to yoga. Like it took me like really being at like hitting a bottom, so to speak, like being desperate to be open and to show up. And I mean, I even went grudgingly, I'm sure, but like, yeah, it opened up a whole, like, again, that was like, there's been life-changing days, that first panic attack, like kind of coming into yoga, like opened all these doors for me. And I do teach kids yoga. I speak, well, I've been teaching special needs kids for a lot of years, but yeah, I teach all abilities and a lot like breath. We got to get that stuff out of us,
Yeah.
Like kids, I focus on, the breaths where we can release that irritation. And they don't have the words. I'm like, when you feel like, give them the face and the noise, and then we're going to breathe like this. So
But you give them the words too, right? You show them like but then you also give them the word irritation, right? And so,
yeah.
Right. Because
frustrated. I try, I mean, anger's okay, but I try and like give more words than just
you're
sad,
standard,
but that kind of stuff.
And there's some words that are age and developmentally appropriate, right? But it's always good to throw some higher order thinking words, even at the youngest little yogis. But yeah, like Abby said too, I just want to echo, and like you said too, Patty, it's just when we hit the bottom and we need something else, right? You need something else to shake you up. And the fact that it was yoga, right? At least the jumping off point for trying to find more coping strategies and tools was yoga. And then in the subsequent years, obviously you add more things to the tool chest, but it's still the baseline for me too. I know, I mean, I won't speak for you, Abby, but like, it's still the thing that I come back to the most. And we both teach kids yoga and mindfulness as our job. But your own practice can sometimes get lost when your work is wrapped up in yoga. And so when I'm struggling, it is still usually the first thing I go to, even if it's just anchoring to my breath for 3 seconds, right? That is sometimes all it takes for me to get into that, correct state of mind to continue to move through. And you mentioned before about acceptance, right? And yoga teaches us acceptance. And because you weren't able to let go of that tightened grip that you had on whatever it is you were struggling with, because you weren't first able to like be with it and accept that it's here, that it's real, and that it's invalid experience. And so that's something that it took me a long time to learn too. I went through lots of mud before I found my practice, and mine kind of hit the nail on the head too, when it's like, full-blown panic attack. Okay, I need something else. Stuff's not working. So that's when I found it. But, I just feel like the most powerful thing that I hope all the warriors can take away from hearing any of us talk about yoga is that it isn't something that you have to like spend a ton of time figuring out. It could just be as simple as accepting by witnessing your experience. And then maybe you just look at your breath as an indicator to your experience, as you had said beautifully, Patty. And then maybe some extended exhales, maybe some left nostril breathing. For me, I love extended exhales too. I also love Ujjayi breath, ocean breath. That's probably my second go-to behind extended exhales. I figured I'd throw a new one at all of our warriors, confuse them further. Okay.
But don't you think the breath too brings you, like, to me, it's very powerful because it brings me to the present moment. So much today, like maybe not in 20 years ago, but so much today, the anxiety would be my projection about the future. So maybe if it's not happening, it's that projection. And so the breath brings me right into the moment. So it's like, okay, well, that's not even happening right now. So I think that's another gift of any kind, like whatever breath, like, people get to choose what resonates for them. Is the beauty, but it keeps us in the moment.
Yeah. I always think of that as like the anchor, right? It's like when my mind is telling me all the horrible things that could happen or reminds me of all the horrible things that did happen. The breath is like that anchor into the present moment. It's like, oh yeah, if I remember to pay attention to my breath, then I remember I can anchor into this moment and stop those other two sides of future and past thinking. So I totally agree. It's like, it just brings you into this present moment where in this moment, most of the time, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Right. No actual bears in the moment.
Right.
Hopefully.
If you're in the woods, maybe it's different.
Maybe. I would never be in the woods. Different story. Okay. So Patty, how would you describe your relationship to anxiety these days?
You know what? I still don't like it.
Yes.
You know what? It's like, I don't like it. But overall, like looking at the bigger picture, I'm grateful for the experience, only because it's made me do more work and dig deeper than I would have on my own. And it allows me to help other people at a more profound level.
Oof. Well said.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time and speak to a younger version of yourself, what would you say to a young Patty?
So I think the main thing would be to be more compassionate with myself and others. So I have a great story about a client, and then even kind of wrapping up my own journey with like kind of getting out of that intense anxiety. So the compassion, I was very hard on myself, just for starters when I got there. But before I was really experiencing that first, major panic attack, I had clients in the past, so working as a counselor, who had, like anxiety, and they would call them panic attacks. And so I remember being in there, like, I feel one coming on now. And I used to think like, okay, well, like if you know what it is, and that's just what it is, like, why, I just really didn't get it. Like I had the counseling tools to offer in this, but I didn't have the compassion on an experience level. Like, and then you get like, so then I know, okay, they're freaked out, it's coming, it's this. I'd kind of be like, well, but we're all here, you're fine. It's so that's what, again, right. Just kind of that no experience coming from an intellectual point. So for me, the compassion has helped me be better with other people. And then for myself too, the other thing I would say back when I was younger, really kind of experiencing this in my early 30s, is to ask more questions of the medical field. So I was a couple of years into this, maybe like 2-3 years into, really trying to navigate this severe anxiety on a daily level, when they finally figured out I was being overdosed on thyroid medicine. So a lot of mine was an imbalanced thyroid. So like, I really think, but I just kind of went along and went with it. I didn't ask questions. I didn't push. So my younger self also would ask for more thorough, the regular thyroid test doesn't tell you much. You got to do, like, there's multiple layers to that too. And so, yeah. Wow. So that was another one I would, so again, balancing the hormones, the thyroid, like helped 100%. Again, there's, not like, okay, it's never, and it doesn't bubble up, but it really, made a huge, huge difference. So that would be something I would tell my younger self, rather than just going with well, this is what they said. Okay, let's just,
I mean, that's huge right there, right? It's like, how often do we think about, the things that I'm putting inside of me might also be making my anxiety worse, or, there, or whatever it is. And it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to be an inconvenience, to advocate for yourself. That really resonates. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Because things shift. And I had tried so many different things in the midst of it. I mean, I lost a ton of weight with what not necessarily intentionally, but what I was not letting myself eat to try this. And I was trying, I tried so many things. And then to find out like, okay, if the hormones are off,
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. I love that as just advice, just generally too, right? Like we are in charge of what happens more often than we think in a medical situation, right? And we can advocate for ourselves and speak up and teach the children in our lives to ask questions and to speak up, right? So I love that so much. Thank you. All right. So final question before we jump into some lightning round fun, where we get to know you a little bit better and play a little bit and lighten the mood just a touch. I mean, it's all been light, but let's lighten it up even more and have some fun. What does being an anxiety warrior mean to you? When you hear this phrase, what comes up for you?
So what came to me, the one word like that comes to me when I hear that is victory. So being the warrior, like I'm victorious, I can live my life. I'm not isolated. I'm not shut down in fear. I'm not, limiting my life because of being afraid I'm going to have an anxiety attack or feel anxious. So to me, it like the anxiety warrior, it's like it's victorious.
I love that.
And I know we're not all in that place. Like people who are listening may not be in that place yet. And I don't, I have days where maybe I'm not there, but like overall, that's how I feel.
I love powerful. That. Yeah. That's the first time I've heard someone use that word. And I felt it. Like I had a visceral response. Like, yes, we are victorious. Maybe not every single moment of every day, but as a whole, like we're living our lives. We're showing up. Thank you.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
I wrote, I am victorious just as for myself as an affirmation for right now. So thank you for that too. Like Abby said, that's a first here on the pod for sure. But just in general, when speaking about anxiety, right? Like thinking of it as like, I'm winning. I'm winning this thing, right? I'm winning this hard life that I've been handed, no matter how, and everyone's life is so different and everyone's path is so unique. Everyone's journey is its own, but life is hard. It's complicated. And so we can find victory in even the smallest of moments. Right. And I think that can be a really powerful affirmation.
Right.
Beautiful.
It took me a long time to get there. So I know, but yeah.
You said it's not even all the time, right? You don't always feel it. And you acknowledge that the warriors listening may not be there yet either. But maybe we can start looking at those little things that we do accomplish. Like maybe it's just getting up today and going to work. Like, can we find the victory in that?
Trying a new yoga class, right? Like, just those little things, stepping outside our comfort zone. Making eye contact and introducing yourself to someone new. Like, that is victory right there.
That's right. We're big proponents of patting ourselves on the back for even the most mundane of tasks over here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Patty, for inspiring us and for sharing so many incredible of parts of your life experience with the warriors. Are you ready though to have a little bit of fun in some lightning round?
Let's see. Yeah, I'm up for it.
All right, Patty, here comes the official sting. Are you ready for lightning round?
Yay!
Lightning. Okay. So Abby and I are going to go back and forth and ask you just like a fun get to know you type question. You do not have to answer at lightning speed. Take a pause, take a breath, consider your answer, and then just
okay, I'm ready. I was like, right. Do I have to?
Yes.
Okay. So
you needed the sting. You needed to hear us do our lightning round sting, and now you're energized. Okay. Abby, you want to go first?
I'll go first. All right. So in reading some of what you filled out in the forum, you shared that you love the beach. So what is your favorite music to listen to on the beach?
Oh, you know what? So that's an interesting question. None. I want to hear the waves.
You want to hear the waves?
I want to hear the ocean. I want to hear the waves. I want to hear that. Yeah. So I don't bring music to the beach.
Okay.
Oof,
yeah.
Yes.
I don't go to the beach very often. I'm landlocked right now. I miss hearing the waves, and I forgot because I was thinking about like people with their big boom boxes bringing music, which I don't like, but I was like, okay, what music? I like it. The natural earth song.
That's right.
Earth
The
song.
waves, the wind, all the things. So good.
The seagulls.
All of it.
The seagulls stealing your lunch. Yes.
Yes.
Those are the sounds of the beach. Okay. If you could have any job or try your hand at anything other than your own, what would you choose to do?
Oh my gosh, that's a hard one because I'm at a point where I love what I do. I'm newly, so the thing I've tried new is I'm a new author. I love teaching. I think if I could step out of that or do something else, I would add more like traveling and speaking. So that would be an answer, but it would kind of like would add on, but it would be a new,
Okay.
new venture.
A new venture. Yeah.
Seed planted for yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have a favorite book, TV show, or movie? Like something that is always like, oh, I just need some comfort. And it's like your go-to book, TV show, or movie.
My comfort. I'm laughing because it's still, so I've got a stack of like, self-help and all that kind of books to read. But my escape is it's the long series Black Dagger Brotherhood series. So it's fiction, and I lose myself, and it has nothing to do with my spiritual lifestyle or any of that. It's my escape. So
I love that.
Love it. Yeah.
There's only so much learning we can do.
They're
in a day.
vampire warriors. So there you go. Not
Yes.
anxiety warriors.
I'm going to look this up.
I know. I love a good sci-fi book.
It's a little risque though, too. It's a little, it's under romance, but it's like
vampire romance, even better.
I mean, I haven't
you're
had my
improving on
vampire
it.
romance since Twilight. So
Right?
Yeah, it's my guilty
Buffy
pleasure.
the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah. I love it.
That's good. Okay.
Those are sitting right here. My daughter's right in front of me, the Twilight series.
They're old school classics at this point. And but I use the word classic very loosely. I know they're not really classics. I know what the classics are, but at the same time, for our generation, maybe, for Abby's and mine. Okay. What's like a food that you could never live without? What's like, if you had to be stranded on a desert island with one type of food for the rest of your days, like what would it be?
That one's hard. I'm like, I'm like, my weakness with food is like donuts and pastries. So which I would feel awful if that was the only thing I could eat. I wouldn't feel good for my body, but that's kind of my go-to. I don't eat meat, so it'd be like just major fresh vegetables, like from one to the other.
Fresh vegetables. That's a new one. In terms of like, what's like the favorite food? Fresh vegetables. Wow. Okay.
And pastries.
Feel good on that,
pastries.
But
that's true. Well, all right. How about it's like you have your main course and your dessert. So that's fair. We'll give you that on that island. You get both things, veggies followed by donuts and pastries.
Okay. My final question. If someone was making a movie about your life, who would you like to play the part of you?
Oh my God, that one is so hard. I don't watch a lot of TV or a lot of movies, but that's actually really hard to
I know. As I was asking, I was like,
I'm like, God,
see, and I'm thinking about people for Patty. I've got a couple of actresses.
I mean, I thought of
I have a couple for you.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I want to hear what you think first before I throw them at you.
I know. Gosh, I don't even know. In 6th grade, we had made these masks of, we had to be somebody who was famous. And so the group for me picked Meryl Streep. So maybe that, at the time I didn't even know who she was. So I was like, okay, so there we go. Maybe I'll just throw that out because that
there
came
you
to
go.
me.
I thought the Meryl Streep there. Yeah.
And she's the goat. She would nail the role.
Yes. Yes.
Who went through my mind just for fun's sake was either like a Helen Hunt or like a Laura Linney. I was getting either one of those two fine, amazing actresses too in my mind when I just listening to you this last hour.
Yeah.
Right? Abby, you see
Yeah.
that? Okay.
I totally feel those. And I was thinking Meryl Streep too.
100% Meryl.
Yeah.
I
Were
mean,
you
can't go
really?
wrong with
Okay.
Meryl.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, it was the group, like the class got to decide for everybody. So we weren't even in. So that's what the class decided for me. I just remembered it when you asked. So
that means they think you're the GOAT because Meryl Streep is the GOAT. Yeah, she's amazing. All right. Final question for lightning round. What is one wish or hope that you have for humanity?
That they be kind. And this comes from, having a child that's going to need care for all of his life. And I don't, if in the natural progression, I would go before him. And so wanting to have a place where he is safe and cared for, but I think, kindness is needed. So that would be my, like, I see stuff out that scares me. Like I want people to be kind to him. So I think, if we are kind to each other, that would be a step in the right direction.
Yeah. The world would be infinitely better with
it
more
would be
kindness.
a much nicer place to be in.
Mhm.
Yeah. 100%. Amazing. All right. So we love to ask all of our guests to share if they have a win of the week. So it could be something big or small. It doesn't have to have happened this week. It could just be something that's been going on for you recently, but like, do you have a win to share with us?
I have a big win this week in terms of anxiety. So I booked flight to Rome for the fall. So the win is, and now I've never been afraid to fly. I just, whatever. But if I listen to my mind and I doubt and I get into that self-doubt, like I'll be like, okay, well, I'm over the ocean. What if I have an anxiety attack there? What can I do to, that really messed with me for a lot of years. And still like the thought comes. And so not going somewhere because I don't want to be afraid of, having full blown panic or this. So the fact that I was like, yeah, no, we're going to do it. So I booked my flight. I'm going with some friends and family. So it'll be 6 of us women that go together. But yeah, that I really and I did pause for a moment. Like it went through my mind. I'm like, no, I'm not going there. So I booked the flight anyway, and I'm going in the fall.
Woo!
Sounds amazing.
That's huge and very exciting.
Honestly.
Yeah, because there was a time like I would have tapped out of that kind of stuff because it was there would have been too much fear. So that is a win.
Exactly. And you can always, not you, but like for me, tapping out, it would be either something like, oh, I can't because of my anxiety, or I would just make up excuses. Oh, I'm so busy. And thanks for thinking of me, as opposed to like, no, anxiety, you chill out. Like, let's go do this.
Let's go have anxiety in Rome.
Well, I know. And that's a whole nother one is I've never left my son that long. He's 25 now, so he's an adult, but I'm still a full-time like primary caregiver. So I've never left him for that long. So there's layers to this as well, but so that's a win. It's a win. It's a win-win.
Yeah, that'll be maybe a win for him too in some way. And I love that.
Because my husband's not going. He's like, yeah, Dad and I party.
All right.
And eat all the junk food. So yeah.
Yes.
Look at that. Exciting for everyone. All the pastries. That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Patty. Sounds like a big win. And we look forward to hopefully seeing, pictures online or whatever you share with us. Email us those pictures, and that'll be a win for us when we get to see what an amazing trip you have. All right. So talk to our listeners about how they can connect with you, where they can find you, what's going on with you work-wise.
Okay. So a few places. I am on social media on Instagram at Patty, that's with the Y, _Yogable. So it's like yoga and able, Yogable. I put it together. So at Patty _Yogable. My website is pattyyogable.com. And then on Facebook, it's the Yogable, Patty Wildasinn. So Yogable comes from, I've been teaching yoga, Kundalini Yoga for 20 years. I still do that. And I tend to gravitate, the non-typical yogis gravitate towards me. So I teach a lot of seniors. I teach a lot of like disabled kids and camps and yoga studios, schools. I've done all of that. And So I'm very good at offering yoga in a way that's accessible to all. And so my first book, that's what I called it, Yoga Bowl. I'm like, I like to make Yoga Bowl available to all. I used to say, you can breathe, you can do yoga bowl, you can do yoga. And so one day, like, it's doable came out as yoga bowl. So anyway, confusing there, but that's where I got the name, because instead of doable, that's what came out. And so that was a couple of years back. And then, so what was originally going to be a chapter in that on yoga for like addiction, which includes like the anxiety cycle, all the stuff we've been talking about, took on a life of its own. And so in the fall, I published Yoga for Addiction Recovery, which talks about addiction, but also these cycles, these loops that we get caught up in our heads. So some of the very practical breaths that I talked about, you can find in the book. So it's Yoga for Addiction, 8 limbs, 10 bodies, 12 steps. So that goes together. So I'm working on a third project with my mom now that'll be about raising extraordinary kids. So special needs stories that we'll collect from around the country, I hope. But yeah, on the website, you can see I teach weekly classes, special series. I'm on Zoom twice a week. I have students that join me for gentle Kundalini from all over the United States. Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Well, my time, I'm on the West Coast, so so it's morning for me. But so it's like, it feels like this yoga journey I've been on for a long time. It's just unfolding and spreading, and the authoring is the newest component to it. But I'm just excited to share with people, like, what you can do this. You don't have to have the perfect body or outfit or attitude or any of that. You just show up and work where you are.
Yes,
totally.
That is it. That is yoga right there. Well, everyone go follow Patty
on
Instagram, check out her website and all the amazing offerings, the books. We are just so beyond grateful that we have gotten to hang out with you for the past little while, getting to know you and your incredible story and journey. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh my gosh, warriors. This was so good.
Yeah.
So freaking good. Patty, you are Meryl Streep. You are our anxiety Meryl Streep.
Yes.
So well spoken, right? Just like
paints amazing pictures. Oh my gosh.
It makes sense that she's an author.
Yeah.
Right?
Hearing her speak makes me want to read her books, right?
Same.
Yeah.
So good. Thank you so much, Patty, for being a guest on our show. It was truly an honor. God, I feel like I have a million things I want to say, like always. I think the first thing I want to say, aside from what we're sharing so far, which is just what an eloquent speaker she is and how she's able to sort of help us visualize her experience in such tangible ways, is how much I related to a lot of the early parts of her anxiety story. Just like talking about anxiety is like something that she couldn't label as a young person, something that she was afraid to share outwardly. I mean, she spoke, which I couldn't relate to this part about like not be feeling safe to share her emotions in spaces. I didn't have that, but it also wasn't normalized necessarily either. Right. For me. So I could relate to that. And just like the high performance hiding that she talked about doing, that I could definitely relate to, even after I had my yoga practice and knew that my experience was anxiety. Just like how often it feels really easy to just like, don't let the people around you know that you're going through some stuff. Keep it inside, keep it bottled. And then eventually, like she said the word hum, and it triggered me because I use that word so often. The water boils over. You can't contain it anymore. And it's just like, that's when I'm like, oh yeah, Margot, tap back in. Right. Give yourself that pause. She talked about how she wasn't allowing herself to really pause and accept her experience so that she could then move through it. And so, I think that's sort of like the mishmash of my first takeaway.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel so much of what you're saying. Totally. And just like the words that she used, like the hum, right? It's like, anxiety is like like this low grade humming that's kind of always there that you're kind of used to until it starts to get louder and you're like, oh my God, like, wait, I've been anxious this whole time. Like, right. But that is not my takeaway. My takeaway still, in line with this is, it just like hit me at my core when she was like, don't compare your insides with someone else's outsides. And like, whoo, like
Yeah.
I want to scream that from the rooftops. I want to make sure that I say that to every human being I meet that I'm teaching. Like, you hear the language, like, don't compare yourself to others, right? And you hear like, you know, a tree doesn't compare its branches to the tree next to it. You know, you like, you get it. You're like, yeah, I'm not supposed to compare myself. But part of what we are comparing, at least for me, is I am comparing my internal, emotional, mental experience to what I see on other people's external, because I can never compare to their internal because I'm not there.
Right. It could all be an illusion too.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So it was like the way she put that just like gave me another huge takeaway in the layers of comparison with others. Right. Because that's ultimately what we are doing, is comparing our insides to other people's outsides. And then sometimes, sure, we're comparing outsides to outsides. But, you know, for me, it was just like, wow, that is such solid advice that like everyone needs to hear. That was one of my takeaways.
Agreed. Yeah. I think my other major takeaway is just, you know, I loved hearing her talk about her coping strategies, her experience with yoga, and specifically talking about how breath work was so powerful for her, because I do feel like at the end of the day, what you and I are always trying to say to our warriors and in general with our work and how we live authentically in it as well, is that yoga is a practice, something we do consistently or need to try to do consistently. And it doesn't have to do with, she mentioned like wearing fancy clothes and having all the things. And you can kind of show up scared and show up as you are. And, but all you need is your body and your mind and your breath. Right. And so like having that be one of the last things she talked about was powerful for me, because it's just another reminder that we have all the tools simply by having a body, simply by having the ability to breathe, right? Simply by understanding that we can grip a little bit of control over our thoughts with practice, with patience, and with compassion. And so, yeah, I think that's my final takeaway, is just don't forget to connect to your breath. It's such a great indicator of your own experience, what you're dealing with in the moment. And then utilizing that same powerful practice to help you move through something. It's like it's information, and then it also helps us to explore what we're coping with. With a little bit of you know, a little bit of strategy, a little bit of intention.
No, I love it. I mean, it's simple but not easy, right? It's like we have the resources, right? But to remember to apply them, to remember they're there, to remember which is good, and you know, it's like that's the not easy part. But I totally feel that. I would say I have so many takeaways. My brain is like, which one do I pick? Which one do I pick? Because this was just such an amazing conversation. I'm down between two. So I'm going to just say, I just want to reflect that I loved the use of the word victory with Anxiety Warrior. Like, I just want to say that. And then I'll say, that the other takeaway for me would be, we just don't know people's experiences, right? And this kind of ties into don't compare your insides to someone else's outsides. But here she was, this high-performing student, and on the outside, she probably looked a certain way to people, right? She's got a 3.8 GPA. And then no one's probably until later on realizing what's actually going on with her. And it just really made me think about just all of the teens right now in all of the high schools everywhere. And especially since there's been like increase in spikes in anxiety and in depression and everything since COVID.
Suicide.
Suicide, like we might see on the outside how kids are performing, but how can we also find ways to know how kids are doing on the inside, you know, because she painted it so beautifully. She was sharing how she still maintained a high GPA. She was still going to school and doing stuff. And yet to cope with her inside discomfort, she turned to drugs and alcohol. Right. And so it just really made me think about just how important it is when we're seeing children to not just see the external performance of, you know, how they're showing up, but also really still asking, how are you doing?
Right. And then being willing and able to hold that space for them.
Yes.
Right. Create the space that allows them to share with you a little bit of their insides.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's an awesome takeaway. I wholeheartedly agree. Victorious. We have moved through this episode, warriors, and we've reached the conclusion, and it feels victorious. I just love that too. I am victorious. I'm going to add that to like my like daily affirmations.
Yeah.
Right.
Love it.
Love it so much. Thank you, Patty. All right, warriors, if you'd like to connect with us for any reason, you can join our Instagram family. We are at Anxiety Warriors Podcast, or you can email us at anxietywarriorspodcast@gmail.com. You can send us your wins of the week, share any topic ideas with us, anything you'd love to hear us talk about on the show. If you think you'd be a great fit as a guest on our show, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you and help you tell your story here on our platform. Please take a couple of seconds and smash that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're tuning in. Leave us a review, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow the show on all of these platforms so you don't miss an episode. That helps us and it helps you so you never miss an episode. And share at least one of our episodes with someone in your life that has anxiety. If you are listening to this right now and you love our show, send it to even one person that you think will appreciate it. And that will mean so much to us. Thank you.
They might be a future guest. So you never know what'll happen by sharing this with one person.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Also, you can tap on the link in our show notes, our threadless merch shop, and grab yourself something fun for spring, for summer, with some Anxiety Warriors logos on them.
Well, thank you all so much for going on this journey with us. We are so grateful that we get to do this with you all.
Till next time.